Next, you need to think about what if you want to attract these candidates. So what will attract them, what career paths, job opportunities, the culture, is it flexible, and are there social events within the company? New and You, Forbes released an article saying the 5 best ways of recruiting was the 15-second wacky commercials, wrap an RV in hiring tape, hand out employee referrals.
Thank you, Taylor. My name is Eric Hasenfush, and like Taylor said, I'm going to be discussing the challenges and constraints in recruiting. First off, this really boils down to 3 major things: the methods that are going to be used when pulling the people, budgeting the money effectively and efficiently, and the recruitment and candidate interaction, which is essentially the interview. With the methods, you want to know whether you're going to be pulling many people or pulling a small amount of people. If you're pulling a large amount of people, you want to do it cost effectively and fill in certain techniques won't pull enough people if you don't do it well. This all boils down to the budgeting. Money's everything when it comes to businesses. You got to budget your money correctly, and is there money there to recruit properly? If you're a small business owner, the most you might be able to afford is a help wanted sign. Next, you have to budget your money that works well with the job that you're looking to fill. If you're an Apple CEO and you're looking for a new chief financial officer, you're not going to use the same budget that you would to find a salesman in middle management. It just wouldn't make sense. Policy constraints is the next big thing. Are you going to promote from within? Are you taking existing employees and promoting them to fill those existing spots? Or are you doing temporary to permanent, where you might only have someone for 6 months, or they might be with the company for the next 5 years? Then the tricky one comes down to is recruiting and hiring relatives. Most places, they don't want to see your wife or your brother or sister working at the desk 2 rows down from you. If you're in a big corporate setting, though, where you got a 60-story building, it might not affect so much if they're below you, because eventually, though, this can affect your organizational image, which essentially is your reputation within the community. As a candidate or as a recruiter, you want to ask yourself from a candidate's perspective, why does this person want to work here? What do they find interesting about this company? Is it a Fortune's 100 best company? Is it JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or Microsoft? They have a great reputation within the business community, so you have to uphold that. If you don't get good people in there, you're going to affect their image. And this comes down to job characteristics. As a recruiter, you need to create a realistic job profile. If you don't, you're going to lead people on, and they're not going to expect the job they expect isn't going to be the one that they're going to get. The good thing about this is that you learn all the positive aspects of the job, and you get a good understanding of the job before you get in there. The bad part about it is there's always going to be negative things in a job, no matter what you do. I think if you like 90% of your job and you don't like the other 10%, you're doing very well. If you're a nurse, you're going to have your great days, but then some of those days you might see someone lose their lives, or they're cleaning out bedpans for 4 hours. It's just the way it works. But hiding the bad is the worst part you can do to someone. If it's unethical and it can ruin job performance. You don't like your job and you expect to be an accountant, but you're getting coffee every day. You're not going to want to show up for work. And the recruiter-candidate interaction is the recruiter really affects the person to apply for a job. If they know the majority of people coming in here don't get an accurate idea of what they're doing, they're not going to want to apply to the job. You need to have active listening. You need to be able to communicate with them on their level, as in just so that they make you feel more comfortable. If you need to work on active listening, you do role-playing scenarios, get a recruiter in that's working with you, and you could sit down. It helps you put them in your shoes, and you can get a better understanding of what it's like to be a candidate. The next thing is helping your recruiter. You gotta help the recruiter. If you're on the marketing team and you just lost a member, he decided not to show up to work anymore, and you gotta find a new person, the recruiter isn't gonna know what you need to get done for that job. You need to stop down there at your recruiter, give them the realistic job preview, tell them what needs to be done, and they can get you an accurate person to fill that job, because essentially you're gonna be working with that person every single day. my new and you, 3 weeks ago, I had an interview with a Subaru dealership for a management position. They were filling 2 positions, one was full-time and one was part-time. Explained to me that the full-time position was already filled. And as we're going through the whole interview, towards the end, he tells me we picked up a lot of resumes, and he's gone through like 40 different interviews for this job in the last 2 weeks. That just tells me that he pulled in way too many people, and he didn't effectively use his money correctly, and didn't pull it right. To review, budget is everything. If you don't budget your money well, you're gonna fail. You need to be honest with the realistic job preview. It's unethical if you don't. And always help your recruiter, because if you're the marketing guy, you're gonna be working with this person when they hire them. And next up is Michelle with the evaluation of the recruiting process.
Thank you. So I'm Michelle. I'm going to be talking about the evaluation of the recruiting process. So with this, we're going to discuss why we evaluate, what exactly evaluation is, and metrics that organizations use to evaluate their own individual company. So first off, why do we evaluate? On average, 25% of employees, new hires, leave their company within the first year of employment, which is obviously not ideal for the company. So the company can evaluate their own recruiting process to be sure that employees aren't going to leave and that they're also being cost effective. So now, what exactly does evaluation entail? It's using metrics to examine the recruiting process and determine how much the recruiting process costs and if employees are remaining in their positions. So then those results are going to be analyzed to see if they're being cost effective and have employee retention. So the first metric is cost per hire, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's how much it costs to hire each person. There's a bunch of fees that you can see here that are totaled up depending on each company, and you take the total cost and divide it by the number of hires. And this helps companies understand how much they're spending and if they're utilizing enough resources. So you can take either total cost or cost per hire, and that can also assist them in setting budget plans for the future of the company. The next metric is yield ratio, which is a calculation of how many people make it through the first recruiting step to the next step in the hiring process, which is essentially getting an interview. So we take the number of applicants, say it's 100, and divide it by the number of candidates that were selected for an interview. If it's 50, the yield ratio is 50%, which can be compared to historical company data. So if the previous year the yield ratio had been 40%, and this year is 50%, the company is improving in that aspect. And the goal is to find the source that pools the best candidates at the lowest cost, which could be something such as employee referrals. So if the best yield ratio is among the candidates that were referred by other employees, the company may encourage this method since there is no direct cost associated with this. So an employee referral program may be implemented in the company. The next metric is also pretty self-explanatory. It's time to fill. So it's a period of time from when the job is first available until the day it's accepted by a new candidate that they interviewed. And they analyze the average time that it takes to fill a vacancy, which is beneficial for the company because vacant costs are still costing them money. So employers can then determine the best time to hire new employees, and this prevents a strain on productivity because managers can redistribute the work among other employees so they can pick up the workload that was missing from that one vacant position. And in order to get these positions filled quickly, managers must make sure that the salary is realistic and is going to meet applicants' expectations, and that the skill set for the position is properly identified, and to interview down the right path in terms of looking for people that would be the best fit for the company. So the new hire performance analyzes the performance of all hires compared to all employees that may have been with the company a little bit longer, and calculate if the new hires are performing about the same as them or better or worse. So for example, if employees are measured on a 4.0 scale and the average employee is set to be rated a 3.0, they would evaluate a new hire, and if they fall near the average, they're performing okay. And if they were to fall below a 3.0, say a 2.5, new training opportunities may be introduced for new hires. So then new hire turnover is the biggest indicator of recruiting strategy failing because employee retention is a critical issue for HR managers. Like I mentioned before, 25% of new hires are leaving within the first year of employment. So you would identify the time frame, typically 1 year, and measure how many new hires left the company in a year as compared to all other employees leaving the company in 1 year. And similarly to yield ratio, you would compare this to historical data to see if the company is doing better or worse than in prior years. So some reasons for turnover may be external factors such as employment brand or job fit, or maybe some more personal internal factors like wanting more recognition from a manager or desiring more benefits and compensation. some ways to prevent turnover are to emphasize the positive aspects of the business, or to spot trends in turnover so you can predict them for the future. So it would be positions that typically need to be refilled, many employees leaving for similar reasons, or many employees leaving after the same length of employment. And lastly, there's candidate experience. So you want to take a look at the candidates that didn't necessarily get hired for the job but still were part of the process, because rejected candidates will still influence other candidates for the future and cause a reputation for the company in the market. So through my research, I found that social media is really high for recruiting right now. 92% of companies use social media to recruit their candidates. So in terms of evaluation, this is a pretty effective process. They use LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and 73% said that it was successful for them. But on the other hand, 75% of recruiters said that they do check candidates' social media profiles, and 1/3 of them have rejected candidates based on something that they saw, such as references to alcohol and drugs or posts of a sexual nature. So in conclusion, today we discussed the recruiting process, organizational recruiting considerations, internal and external recruiting, challenges and constraints in recruiting, and evaluation of the recruiting process. Thank you.
Can you show that doc without the stuff around it?